I wasn't planning to be anyone's hero that day. But when she slipped off the edge of that cliff and I caught her hand, I had no idea I was grabbing hold of something much bigger, a secret that could get us both killed. I didn't wake up that morning thinking I'd be hauling a stranger off a cliff. The wind howled so loud it swallowed every other sound as I tore across the ridge. I could barely hear myself think, let alone her scream, but that cry? It still sliced right through the chaos. Raw. Desperate. My lungs burned with each step, but I kept running. I had to. The second I saw her slip, arms flailing as she disappeared over the edge, something kicked in. No thought, just instinct. Hold on. I shouted even though it was pointless, she was already halfway down. My boots slid on the gravel, the loose rocks threatening to take me with her, but I launched myself forward anyway. Adrenaline surged like a flood. Just as she started to drop, I managed to grab her wrist. My hand locked around hers and the weight of her body nearly dragged me over with her. I hit the edge hard, boots skidding, the rocky ledge biting into the soles like knives. But I held on. Her face, wide-eyed, frozen with terror, met mine. For one breathless second, everything stopped. Don't let go, she cried, her voice cracking as tears streamed down her dusty cheeks. I'm not going to, I said through gritted teeth, my arms trembling under the strain. Down below, jagged rocks waited like vultures. My fingers throbbed, slick with sweat, my grip slipping inch by inch. But I clung tighter. She thrashed, trying to grab onto anything, roots, rocks, whatever, but it was all just crumbling dirt. I locked eyes with her. Look at me, I barked. You're not going to fall. That flicker of fear in her eyes softened. She gave a tiny nod and with a growl, I yanked with everything I had left. Little by little, I pulled her back from the brink. When she finally flopped onto solid ground beside me, both of us gasping for breath, I just lay there for a second, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. She latched onto my arm like I was the only thing keeping her grounded, her nails digging into my teeth. Her chest rose and fell in short, shaky bursts. Shock was setting in fast. You all right? I asked, voice hoarse from the effort. She gave a faint nod but didn't say anything. That's when I really noticed her, designer teeth torn at the seams, dirt streaked across her pale face, and a death grip on a sparkling, rhinestone-covered purse. Yeah, she definitely didn't belong out here. Not on some backcountry trail miles from anywhere with a name. What the hell were you thinking? I asked, the edge in my voice sharper than I meant. This place isn't safe. She opened her mouth like she wanted to explain, but then just folded into herself. Tears welled up and suddenly she was sobbing, her face buried in her hands. I sat there, unsure what to do. I wasn't exactly built for this kind of thing. Emotions. Comfort. My life had been a long series of deal with it or don't moments. Saving strangers, especially ones who looked like they belonged in a penthouse, not in a wilderness survival story, wasn't really part of my daily routine. But something about the way she broke, something raw and real, it got to me. After a few minutes, her breathing slowed. She peeked up at me, eyes still glossy. My name's Mara, she said, barely louder than the wind. Nate, I muttered, pushing myself upright and reaching out a hand. She hesitated, then took it. Her fingers were ice cold. Thanks, she whispered, her gaze locked on the dirt between us. If you hadn't been here? I shrugged and brushed the dust off my jeans. Guess you got lucky? But deep down, I didn't buy it. Something about this whole situation felt off. Mara looked like she just stepped out of a fashion magazine. What was she doing all the way out here, in the middle of nowhere? Before I could ask, a sound like footsteps crunching leaves echoed from the woods. She stiffened instantly. Her eyes shot toward the trees. Fear flashed across her face like lightning. Is someone after you? I asked, lowering my voice. She didn't answer. Just clutched that purse tighter and edged closer to me like I could shield her from whatever nightmare was on her heels. And right then I knew this wasn't just a hiking mishap. She was hiding. From someone. And it was serious. I can't go back, she whispered, almost like she was trying to convince herself. They'll find me. I hesitated. My gut was screaming walk away, but there was something in her voice, something broken and full of fear, that made it impossible. Her eyes met mine and she swallowed hard. If I tell you, it'll put you in danger too. I gave her a sideways look. Lady, you just nearly pulled me off a cliff. Danger and I go way back. A weak smile tugged at her lips. Fair enough. She glanced over her shoulder again, haunted. Then finally she said it. I need your help. I crossed my arms, watching her closely, my stomach twisting like I just swallowed a handful of nails. Mara's words hung in the air between us, heavy and impossible to ignore. There was a look in her eyes, a quiet, pleading kind of panic that made it impossible to turn away. Help with what? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. You're being pretty vague here. She dropped her gaze to the dirt, voice barely a whisper. There are people after me, bad people. My eyebrows shot up. What kind of bad? She glanced up, then looked away just as fast. I saw something I wasn't meant to see. Something dangerous. I felt my pulse start to climb. What exactly did you see? She hesitated, biting her lip like she wasn't sure whether to tell me. A deal, she said finally. Big money. Weapons. The kind of stuff that ruins lives if it goes public. Let me guess, I said, already piecing it together. You weren't invited to that little meeting. She gave the smallest nod. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now they're trying to make sure I don't talk. Before I could respond, a sharp crack echoed from the trees. A branch snapped underfoot. We both went still. I didn't breathe. Mara's grip latched onto my arm, tight and trembling. They found me, she whispered, barely audible over the wind. Then she took off, no warning, just grabbed my arm and sprinted toward the forest. Run. And just like that, we were flying through the trees. My heart thundered, the fear in her voice wrapping itself around my ribs like a steel band. Behind us, I heard voices shouting, distant but getting closer. Urgent. Mara, wait. I hissed, stumbling over a root. We can't outrun them forever. We have to try, she gasped, not slowing. The forest swallowed us fast. Branches slapped at my arms, thorns tore at our clothes. I had no idea where we were headed or how long we'd been running. Every step just led deeper into shadow, deeper into her nightmare. Who were these guys? What the hell had she gotten herself mixed up in? And why the hell was I in the middle of it now? Eventually, just as my legs were ready to give out, we crashed through a clearing and found an old, half-collapsed cabin tucked behind the trees. Mara yanked open the door and pulled me inside, slamming it shut. She threw the bolt, then started grabbing whatever she could find to block the windows, an old chair, a busted table, even a log from the fireplace. You've done this before, I said between gasps. She didn't even look at me. More times than I'd like to admit. I helped wedge a table against the door. My brain was spinning. So, what now? You can't keep running like this. I don't have a choice. She sank to the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. They'll never stop. I crouched next to her, struggling to stay calm. Then we stopped them. You said you saw something. Use it. Blow the whole thing wide open. Her head jerked up. I could see the war going on behind her eyes, fear on one side, hope on the other. You don't get it, she said, her voice trembling. These people, they're untouchable. They've got connections everywhere. A loud bang rattled the door and both of us jumped. My heart shot straight into my throat as a deep voice called out from the other side. Mara, we know you're in there. Come out now and we'll keep it clean. Her face went pale and her hands trembled as she clutched that damn purse like it held her whole life inside. I slipped to the window and peeked through a crack in the boards. 3 guys. Armed. No doubt about it, they weren't here to talk. They're not exactly the welcoming committee, I muttered. Mara shook her head, her eyes welling up. If they get in, we're dead. I scanned the cabin for anything useful. That's when I spotted it, a rusted fire poker leaning against the wall. It wasn't much, but it beat empty hands. Stay behind me, I said, grabbing it tight. The door shuddered under another hit. A third. Then it burst inward with a splintering crack, wood flying everywhere. The sound was deafening. They came in fast, shouting, weapons drawn, eyes wild. I didn't wait. I swung hard, catching the first guy square in the ribs. He staggered back, groaning. But the second one was already on me, tackling me into the wall with full force. Everything turned to chaos. Mara screamed. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her digging frantically through her purse, hands shaking so bad she could barely unzip it. I didn't have time to wonder what she was searching for. I had a full-grown man trying to crush me against a wall. We crashed into a chair, sending it flying, and I shoved back hard, teeth gritted, trying to break free. Then bang. The sound was deafening in the cramped room. The guy pinning me suddenly froze, his whole body going stiff before collapsing like a sack of bricks at my feet. I looked up and saw Mara standing behind him. A small pistol clenched between her trembling hands, smoke still curling from the barrel. Where the hell did you get that? I snapped, stunned. She was pale, her eyes wide. I told you. I'm running from people who don't play fair. Her voice wavered, but there was a spark behind it now. You think I'd do that unarmed? The last guy didn't wait around. He turned and bolted out the door without a word. Then the silence hit. Mara dropped to her knees, her whole body shaking as the weight of what just happened came crashing down on her. I bent down and pulled her up. We can't stay here. More of them will be on their way. The smell of gunpowder and blood clung to the air. I grabbed her arm and led her toward the back door. She staggered a bit, legs like rubber. She started. No time. I cut her off. Keep moving. She nodded, clutching the pistol like it was the only thing anchoring her. I didn't blame her. Adrenaline was the only thing keeping me on my feet, too. Outside, the woods stretched out like a black ocean. No lights, no trails, just trees and shadows. We stick to the trees, I said in a low voice. They'll regroup, and they'll bring backup. Mara didn't say anything, just gave a stiff nod. Her lips were pressed tight, her face pale as chalk. Where are we even going? She asked after a few minutes of stumbling through the brush. Anywhere but here, I said. Far enough they can't find us. The silence between us grew heavier with every step. Only the crunch of leaves and twigs under our boots broke it. You need to come clean, I said, glancing back at her. All of it. No more riddles. If I'm putting my neck on the line, I want the truth. She hesitated, glancing around like the trees might be listening. Then she sighed. Okay, no more lies. She paused, her voice suddenly cold with memory. The deal I saw wasn't just guns or dirty money. It was bigger, political dirt, blackmail, the kind of stuff that topples governments. These people aren't just criminals. They're the kind that make things disappear. My stomach twisted. You're saying this goes beyond a few shady thugs? She nodded slowly. Way beyond. I was just supposed to deliver a package, routine stuff. But I got nosy. Opened it. Found pictures. Files. Audio recordings. Evidence that could ruin some of the most powerful people in the country. And now you're a loose end, I said, stopping in my tracks. She looked up at me, eyes glassy with unshed tears. I didn't ask for this. I just couldn't ignore what I saw. And now they'll do whatever it takes to shut me up. She looked so raw, so real in that moment. I felt something tighten in my chest. I couldn't let myself care. But I already did. Mara, I muttered. I'm not exactly someone you call for help with a national conspiracy. I've got my own messes to deal with. She stepped closer, her hand gripping my arm. You already saved me once. If you leave now, they'll finish what they started. I wanted to argue. I wanted to walk away. But I couldn't. Before I could say anything else, a sharp snap echoed through the woods. We both froze. I held a finger to my lips and crouched down, guiding Mara behind a thick clump of bushes. We stayed low, barely breathing. Voices drifted through the trees. Low, deliberate, getting closer. Fan out. One of them barked. She's close. I tightened my grip on the fire poker I'd brought from the cabin. My heart pounded in my ears. They were hunting us. And this time they weren't planning to leave anyone alive. Every muscle in my body was tight, coiled like a trap about to snap. Mara's hand brushed against mine. Her fingers were ice-cold and trembling. We're getting out of this, I mouthed to her. She gave a shaky nod, but the look in her eyes said she wasn't buying it. The footsteps were nearly on top of us now, too close. I motioned for her to stay hidden, then crept toward the nearest tree, keeping low. The fire poker in my hand suddenly felt like a toy against what we were facing. But it was all I had. One of the guys passed by, completely unaware. I didn't hesitate. I lunged, swinging the poker with everything I had. It landed with a sickening crack, and he hit the ground hard. Before the second guy could react, I threw myself at him, taking us both to the forest floor. We crashed into the brush, wrestling for control. Then, out of the shadows, Mara appeared, gun in hand, arms shaking. She aimed it right at the third guy who had frozen mid-step, eyes wide. "Drop it!" she shouted, voice quivering but full of fire. The guy hesitated, caught between arrogance and fear. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. I grabbed his weapon and tossed it into the woods, my chest heaving like I'd just run a marathon. The man glared at us, lips curled in a sneer. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "You're both dead. Just a matter of time." Mara's hand was still on the trigger, knuckles white. "Not if we get you first," she said, cold and steady. I stepped in, laying a hand on her arm. "We're not killers," I said gently. "Not unless we've got no choice." She hesitated, then slowly lowered the gun. Her jaw was clenched, but there was still some part of her that hadn't given up on hope. I turned to the man, looked him dead in the eye. Tell your people this, we're not going down easy. We left him tied up and unconscious. Then we pushed deeper into the woods, more alert than ever. Neither of us said much for a while. I could tell the fight had shaken her. But there was something else in her now too, something hard and focused. I can't keep running, she said at last, breaking the silence. You were right. We have to fight. I looked at her, surprised at the steel in her voice. You sure? Because if we go down that road, it's gonna get ugly. Mara met my eyes. If I don't stand up to them now, they'll keep coming. I won't let them win. Her words stuck with me as we kept moving. She was ready for a fight, but we weren't exactly an army. And whoever was hunting her had money, weapons, people. We need a plan, I said after a while. She gave a nod. There's a place. An old drop spot I used to use when I was doing courier work. It's not far, and it might still have gear stashed there. You sure it's safe? I asked, not loving the idea of stepping back into her past. It's been abandoned for years, she said. No one would think to look there. I didn't like it. But we were out of options. All right, I said. Lead the way. The place was exactly what she'd said it would be, a rundown shack hidden deep in the woods. Looked like it hadn't seen human life in a decade, but it was out of sight, and right now that was enough. Inside, it smelled like dust and mildew. Cobwebs draped from the rafters like curtains. Mara moved quickly, pulling up a loose board in the floor. Inside was a small hidden compartment packed with odds and ends, an old flashlight, a beat-up first aid kit, some cash sealed in plastic. It's not much, she said, handing me the flashlight, but it's a start. I scanned the room, mind already jumping ahead. We need to set traps. If they find this place, they're not walking in uninvited. The next few hours flew by. We worked in near silence, focused and fast. I used the fire poker to sharpen branches into stakes. Mara found fishing line and set up a tripwire across the front path. I was impressed, she moved like someone who'd had to survive before. You're good at this, I said as she tied off the wire with practiced hands. Didn't have a choice, she muttered. When you're running for your life, you learn fast. Her voice was calm, but her words hit me harder than I expected. Whatever her life had been before this, it hadn't been easy. Night settled in, thick and heavy. We sat near the back wall, lit only by the beam of the flashlight propped against a chair. The shack felt like a fragile shell barely holding back the danger just outside. After a while, I broke the silence. Why'd you get involved in all this in the first place? Mara sat quietly, fingers absently tracing the edge of the flashlight. She didn't speak right away. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she said finally, voice low. At first, it was just a gig. Just another way to pay the bills. She looked up at me, her eyes glinting with tears that hadn't fallen yet. But once I saw what they were doing, I couldn't pretend I didn't. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to do the right thing. Now I don't even know if that matters anymore. It matters, I said firmly. You stood up when it counted. Most people would have run. We sat in silence after that, watching the minutes crawl by. We took shifts sleeping in short, restless stretches, always listening. Every creak of the wood outside made my heart jump. But somehow we made it through the night. By the time the sun started pushing light through the trees, I found Mara sitting at the window, staring out at the forest like it held all the answers. Couldn't sleep? I asked. She shook her head slowly. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The ones I hurt. The ones I couldn't save. You can't change what's already happened, I said, sitting beside her. But you can change what comes next. She glanced over, and for a second, there was a glimmer of something in her eyes. You really believe that? I have to, I said. Or what's the point? That brief calm was shattered by the sound of boots approaching, fast and heavy. Mara and I locked eyes. No words needed. We moved into position. The traps we'd thrown together weren't much, but they gave us a few precious seconds. The first guy tripped the line, and a cluster of sharpened stakes fell hard. He let out a scream, and the others paused just long enough for us to get the jump. Stay behind me, I told Mara, gripping the fire poker like it was a sword. The next few minutes were a blur. Total chaos. The shack turned into a war zone. Mara's aim was dead on. I swung like a madman, knocking down anyone who got too close. We didn't hold anything back. When the dust finally settled, the floor was littered with broken furniture and bodies. Blood, splinters, bruises, we were wrecked. But we were still breathing. And that was all that mattered. I looked around, chest heaving. We can't stay, I said. This was just the first wave. Mara didn't argue. I know a guy in the city, she said. Owes me a favor. I nodded. Then we go now. The trip was tense, every sound along the trail making me reach for a weapon. We didn't talk much, there was nothing to say. We both knew how thin the line was beneath our feet. When we reached the city, Mara led us to her contact's place. I didn't like it, not one bit. And I was right. The moment we stepped inside, everything felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Then the guy stepped forward, face full of regret. I'm sorry, Mara. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. In seconds, we were surrounded. No more running. We fought like animals with nothing to lose. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. But we got out. As we ran, bloodied and breathless, I looked at her. We can't trust anyone. She nodded grimly. Just us now. And that was the truth. It was just us. But we weren't backing down anymore. Fueled by desperation, we flipped the script. Took the fight to them. Using everything Mara had stashed, photos, documents, recordings, we blew it all wide open. The public saw it. The media tore it apart. Politicians, executives, corrupt officials, they all got dragged into the light. The fallout was brutal. And fast. That network, the one that tried to kill her, crumbled under its own weight. Justice didn't fix everything, but it gave us room to breathe. One morning, just as the sun started climbing over the city skyline, Mara stood beside me, quiet and still. She looked at me and smiled, just a little. Thank you, Nate, for sticking with me. I gave her a nod, a real one this time. No words, just relief. We made it, I said. And somehow we had.